Okay, welcome everyone. It's Meredith from Health Workforce Queensland. Welcome to Growing Plans. We're really looking forward to having a great discussion with you all tonight. But before I begin, I'd just like to acknowledge country. Today we stand in footsteps millennia old. May we acknowledge the traditional owners whose cultures and customs have nurtured and continue to nurture this land since men and women awoke from the great dream. We honour the presence of these ancestors who reside in the imagination of this land and whose irrepressible spirituality flows through all creation. I also would like to acknowledge I'm hosting this meeting from the lands of the Turrbal and Yagara peoples and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands in which you study, work and live today, and any First Nations peoples participating in this meeting. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and celebrate the diversity of First Nations peoples and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and waters of Australia. So once again, welcome everyone. This is a great opportunity for the GROW students to come together because we've got students from both Central Queensland and North Queensland. So we're excited. This is a first. But before we start the main session, I just would like to, I guess, kind of do a 6 degrees of separation with you. So firstly, we'll introduce Health Workforce Queensland. So as most of you all know, we're a rural workforce agency. We're funded by the Australian government to place health professionals in rural and remote Australia. But I'd just like to take this opportunity to get the Health Workforce Queensland representatives to introduce themselves. So firstly, Caro, would you like to introduce yourself to the students, please?
Yeah, hi, I'm Caro and I look after the best part of Queensland, which is north from Mackay up to the Weipa. So I'm the regional coordinator for that location.
Thank you, Caro. And Louise.
Hi, I'm Louise Banbury. I'm the regional coordinator for Western Queensland, the Gold Coast and South Brisbane, and I beg to differ, Caro. I think my region's the best. We all love our regions the best, don't we? So,
yes.
Maybe we should call in Sandra at this point as the adjudicator. Sandra, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Hi everybody, I'm Sandra. I'm the team leader, Health Workforce Solutions team. So I've got 2 other regional coordinators that are not in this meeting, and I'm sure they would say their regions are the best too. But we love to help out, people like yourselves find jobs, in the regional areas that are of interest to you. So I'll let the girls tell you more about it later.
Thanks, Sandra. All right, so now we'll go to the future workforce coordinators. So Evelyn, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Yes. Hello, everybody. I'm Evelyn. The North Queensland crew would know me, but for the Central, I look after North and Southwest, and I work aside Meredith and Wendy. Your turn, Wendy.
Hi, everyone, and I'm Wendy. Half of you know me from Central Queensland, and hello and welcome to all you North Queensland cohort.
All right, so that's the HWQ crew. Next, you're going to meet Vital Health. Vital Health is a modern allied health practice with a large team of qualified staff from various allied health disciplines. They have centres in Roma, St George, Charleville, Kingaroy, Dalby and Goondiwindi, and they also conduct regular outreach services to surrounding communities. And tonight we've got Caitlin and Bailey, so we'll start off with Caitlin, if you'd like to introduce yourself, Caitlin.
Yes, hello everyone, my name's Caitlin. I am a 3rd year out speech pathologist, currently based in Roma. And I also practice in other locations providing an outreach service. So I've got lots of experience travelling out to different locations to provide speech therapy services.
Right.
Hi everyone, I'm Bailey. I'm a second year out occupational therapist, also based in Roma. I've also done a bit of outreach, currently also servicing Mitchell, which is about an hour from Roma.
Right, thanks guys. So you've got quite a bit of Southwest covered between the two of you. All right, so the next group is who, but we won't get you to introduce yourselves. The Central Queensland students. This is their third year as part of the GROW program, so they've just recently graduated. But we really wanted this opportunity to bring you back into the Grow Rural family so that you can, hopefully this will assist with your planning about your next career steps. And we also welcome the second year North Queensland cohort. And we hope that you get a lot out of this afternoon's session. Just a bit of housekeeping before we start. If you could all put your cameras on, that would be great, because that just it gives us a sense of really being face to face with you as much as we can be virtually. We're also going to ask if you have any questions to just put them into the chat, and Evelyn and Wendy will assist with those. If we aren't able to get to all of the questions, we will make sure that we do respond to them by email after the session. We're also recording the session, so if there's something that you didn't quite hear or want to revisit, the recording will be available online. Okay, so I think just to, I've provided a bit of background about our funding, and in terms of we're funded by the Australian government, but importantly, and I think this is an important distinction to make right at the beginning, is that we're funded to place health professionals in primary healthcare settings. And we know often when we're putting interviewing students for GROW, that there isn't the clarity around what a primary healthcare setting isn't always clear. So Louise is just going to start off by just giving a bit of an overview of what we mean when we talk about primary healthcare, and just to make that clarification. So I'm going to hand over to you, Louise, to do that. Thank you.
So basically, it's looking after private health services. So it's companies such as who we've got today, like Vital Health. It's Aboriginal medical services. So that could be anything from allied health services, private companies that are providing services to outreach communities, as well as some community service work as well, depending on the location, of course. Do you want to add anything else, Caro?
I was just going to say it covers what, just more about private practice. So it's organisations that are not linked to Queensland Health, for example.
Yeah.
So it's purely private practice.
So I think that's an important distinction, is that it's not Queensland Health.
Yes.
And they have their own recruitment process. So what Health Workforce Queensland does is work with primary healthcare settings, and the Caro and Louise and Sandra, that's their main job is to get health professionals into primary healthcare settings. So that's what we'll be talking about tonight. And I think the next important distinction, or not just so much distinction, but I just want to kind of talk a bit about how the GROW program links in with Caro and Louise and the rest of the team, in terms of that we work together as an agency to create the structured pathways for you as GROW students to be placed out in rural locations. Not so much for the Central Queensland students, but certainly for the North Queensland students, that's achieved by you undertaking your university placements in the GROW communities that you're part of. And it's also about the work that Caro is doing in terms of the relationships that she's building with those practices that where you'll be placed, and hopefully where eventually you'll be able to take up a position as a new grad. So there's a lot of work going on in the background, both by Caro and the rest of Health Workforce Queensland, and Leah, who you've met, who's our Health Workforce Coordinator, in growing the capacity of the primary healthcare settings in those communities to create those pathways into job placements for you as new grads. So that's how Grow links in with the Health Workforce Solutions team. Now, Caitlin, I'd like to turn to you if I could, please, and just ask you a kind of quite a broad question about how does the transition from being a health student to a new grad look like?
Yeah, thank you, Meredith. Yeah, so that transition from being a student into a new grad is a very exciting time. It can also be quite a daunting time. And it's a time where you experience a lot of growth as a new clinician, particularly in that first 6 months. So I suppose what you can kind of expect is to kind of come out and almost say to yourself, okay, I've got all this clinical knowledge that I've learnt, and obviously in a 4th year placement, you've had to kind of demonstrate those competencies where you are working somewhat autonomously and managing a very light on caseload. So you kind of come out and that's what you jump straight into in a new grad role. And then there's hopefully, depending on the workplace you're at, typically most workplaces provide some nice supports and structures in place to kind of foster that. And your transition really looks at opening your eyes potentially to the role of a multidisciplined team, and also that growth of other considerations beyond your kind of blinkered clinical reasoning. So particularly in rural practice, it's a time where you're learning about some of those external factors that play a role in your delivery of service, and even some of those other interpersonal and reflection skills that you need to rely upon to provide a good service. So that's kind of what that transition looks like. And I think you get a sense of that ownership and responsibility for your own caseload as well. So typically as a student, for those who are on longer placement durations in their 4th year, typically like 8 to 10 weeks, you're kind of handing that back over to your clinical educator and saying, see you later, I'm on to the next thing. But actually it's your opportunity now. You've got your caseload, you've got those clients that you're seeing through, sometimes for a few years as well. So you kind of get that sense of rapport, relationship building, and actually could see the progress that you're making as a clinician, I think, which gives you that boost, especially in that rural workforce.
Fantastic. Bailey, is there anything that you'd like to add to that?
I think that pretty much sums it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think just to reiterate, it is, I guess the transition is a big process. And yeah, I think it's like totally normal to feel lots of different emotions during that process too. I think Caitlin summed it up perfectly. It's definitely an exciting time, but can be a daunting time as well. And yeah, it can feel like a bit of a roller coaster sometimes.
Yeah. Great, thanks guys. So Caro and Louise, let's have a chat about in terms of you both being regional coordinators, with your each region obviously being the most important region in Queensland. What can you do for the what is it that you can do for the Grow students? Louise, let's start with you, and then Caro will hear from you as well.
Yeah, sure. So with the relationship that I have with the employers, so with the primary health employers, I'm talking to them about the roles that they're looking at in recruiting and the candidates' qualifications, skill sets, but also what qualities they can bring to the actual role. So that's an important part of, you know, talking to the actual new grads that I have apply and getting them to send through their initial CV, and just being able to review that CV and to actually talk to them about where they've, as working or being part of GROW and being a candidate and going through the GROW process, what you can bring extra to the table, you know, with the association with, you might have done a placement in the area, you've done your 3 actual stints in going and being out in community, the relationships you've created in those communities, how you've met with the patients, other allied health, nursing and GP professionals while going out in your actual GROW experiences, as well as the bonds you've created with other health professionals in your teams that you've been going out and going on to GROW with. So with us, it's trying to actually get you to think about all the experiences that you've had that can actually contribute to the position that you'd be applying for, and your strengths as well in what you've learnt by going and participating in GROW and other placements that you might have done as well. So with the actual relationship we've got with the employers, it's actually talking to them about the candidate and doing that cross promotion. So sometimes there may not be a vacancy at the time, but what we can talk to them is about, oh, we've got a new grad that's going to be graduating in November. Are you looking to think about placing say a physio or an OT or a speech pathologist? And then they can talk about the qualities they're looking for, and I can match that to the person that I might have with the CV. So it's that relationship building between both the candidate and the employer.
And that works out really well, Louise, like because you and yourself and Caro are actually with the GROW students through those first 3 years. So you get to know the students, and then you can say, oh, Nathan would be fantastic to work with you, Crystal. You know, that kind of, because you get to know the students, but you also know the practices and what their needs are. So I think, you know, like you're very correct in saying, you know, that how important that relationship building is.
Correct. Yeah, and it's also with knowing the people that are applying and people that have been on GROW and what they've experienced. I can also already talk to the employer about the particular skill sets that you've learnt on just being by doing the actual hands-on training groups that you have, as well as all the visits that you have, all the presentations, being involved with the Aboriginal medical services, with groups like Vital Health. And so it's an important part of that process, and getting those, recognising that you've created a great skill set by just attending GROW.
Caro, what would you like to add?
Yeah, just to follow on from Louise, it's all about the fit. You know, like there's lots of practices out there in different areas and that, but it is actually about the fit, because if you're not in, you know, if you don't feel comfortable within the environment that you're working in, then you're not going to enjoy it. So that's where we can talk about the practice, what the community is on offer, because some communities, as you've seen with GROW, can get right behind professionals like yourselves to, you know, entice them to come and stay and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, everyone wasn't, you know, there initially. They've all kind of moved there, so they can share those kind of experiences and the uncertainty of going to a location that perhaps, you know, you and your suitcase and that's all you've got. So it's about the community and what the location and the practice can provide, and trying to break that ice and make you feel more comfortable with where you go. So by talking and knowing our practices, we can identify which ones would assist you, since we know you a little bit more than we did, you know, 2 years ago. So it's all about matching, talking to us, finding out what, you know, what your interests are really, apart from skydiving, obviously, but, you know, things like that. Helps to work out what's good. Like lots of people like to be by coast, you know, so they can explore their water sports and things like that. Some people you know, are like doing hiking and, you know, so water isn't really their thing, you know, so it's more trying to get that lifestyle balance as well while you're heading off on your new careers.
And in terms of
Thanks, Meredith.
in terms of you know, when the students are working with you and wanting to be placed as new grads, what cost is involved for that?
Our services are free
Well,
of
we can
charge.
actually.
Sorry, you
Mm,
go, Louise.
sorry, Carl.
So yeah, so we're a little different, I guess, to we're funded by the federal government. So when we're talking to practices and presenting, you know, your credentials and your story to them, they're not paying for our services. So there's a little bit more value added to why we can bring professionals to the community, because we're not in it for the money, we're in it for the service and making sure that it's a good fit for everybody. Over to you, Louise.
Yeah, and also we get it, like as a new graduate, you may have had to have done placements and pay for rent, and have had to you know, pay for your education, and you've don't have a lot of money to move. So that's another option we have, is a relocation package for funding to support people to move to different locations, depending on where you're going, of course, and we review that. And if it's in Triple M2 to 7, we can support you with a relocation package and offer you some funds to get you actually settled and move there, like hiring a U-Haul and driving up to the actual location, or if you need to fly and get a removalist in. There's first things like buying the essentials. You might not have a bed or a fridge or anything like that. So they're the sort of things that are stressful as a new graduate to think about when taking on a role. So that's where we come in as well, to support you with that sort of funding to get you up and running straight away and not having to stress about those particular issues as well. So that's that support. And then it's an ongoing case management support that we have too, just sort of touching base. If you've got any questions when you're first starting out, you know, like, oh, do you know of a good hotel or a good location to start off with? We can give you handy hints, but also we can talk to the actual employer and get them to sort of give you a induction process as well, and say, oh, you know, it'd be a good idea to sort of, Alison's looking to share a house. Does anyone else in the community have a share house that they could go and join, rather than paying a rent and being on their own?
I think Louise is frozen.
Frozen, yeah.
Let's turn to you, because I think you use some of the Health Workforce Queensland support processes when you moved to Roma. Do you want to tell the students about that?
Yeah, definitely. I'm so grateful for that assistance, because I think that as like a very early career clinician and someone that was kind of moving out of home as well for the first time, you know, those expenses of relocation were high, and it was so good to have. And I actually had communications with Louise the entire time in terms of supporting me to relocate. And, you know, there was X amount allocated for my relocation, and I was able to kind of quote that to where I wanted to utilise those, you know, that expense and for the relative costs. And yeah, so things like exactly what Louise said, like I used it to pay for removing all my furniture out of my home and setting myself up in a place, and also I think used an amount too for some rent assistance as well. And I think at the time it varies year to year, and I think that's why Louise just kind of keeps in touch with you. But definitely in my circumstance too, I was able to use it for some of those big ticket appliances that I hadn't had to purchase by myself when moving out here. So that was really good. And just the continuous support, and I suppose we'll touch on it later, there's that relocation and setting yourself up. But also as a new grad, some of that, those funding and allowances for professional development and early career support and things like that, that are also super valuable.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thanks, Caitlin. Bailey, you're quite new to Vital Health. You started last year, and you moved from Brisbane to Roma, so that was a massive leap of faith on your part. What kind of planning did you put into place, when you were making that decision to move?
Yeah, definitely. There was a lot of praying and discussion with my family prior to weighing up the pros and cons, because yes, it was probably the biggest life change that I'd made in my life so far. My family thought it was quite spontaneous and unexpected of me. I guess in terms of planning, because I'd never been, really never been outside of, my little area. So I hadn't been out west or anywhere that way. Thankfully, the year before, my family had done a trip out that way, so they had a rough idea of what Roma was like. But yes, I looked up the company. I ended up planning to do a trip out at the end of the year once I graduated from uni, just so I could, have a look where the workplace was, try and have a look at some rentals at the time, because again, that's something you had as well. And just, sort of have a general feel for what the area was like that I'd be moving and living to in a few months. So yeah, that was probably the big sort of planning that was involved there.
Yeah, and it would have been a massive change for you on so many levels. What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced, Bailey?
Yeah, I think it was a lot of big changes all at once. It was, starting my first big person job for the first time. It was moving out of home for the first time, living by myself for the first time, having to establish a whole new social circle, being in a new place, having to, reestablish a routine, just all those sorts of things. So I think, that was more like the daunting aspect of transitioning from a student to an OT. But yeah, I think that was probably like the biggest challenge in terms of moving out here, and I guess the personal aspects of it all. I guess in terms of starting the job, it was definitely because I think we touched on a bit of rural practice throughout my degree, but just definitely wasn't aware of the complexities of what the clients were experiencing out here, very different situations and circumstances to how I'd been brought up, and my own family dynamics, and even just the amount of clients, because there's such a big need for allied health out here. And I sort of, started realising that when the caseload kept building up. Oh wow, so many people need our support.
Yeah. So, Caitlin, this is a question for you. In terms of, can you take us through kind of, I guess, how working in Roma, what that means to scope of practice, but also in the kind of the outreach work that you both do together?
Yeah, and probably to clarify, Meredith, when we say together, Bailey and I are partnered. So typically one aspect of that outreach is that you're paired in a team. So either it's a team of two, or it's maybe more and you might go out in a group setting. So that itself really changes your kind of perspective on your own role in a larger team. And I think that I did a training recently that actually kind of touched on that dynamic in terms of when you come out as a new graduate, you come out with all of that wonderful theoretic knowledge of what you can do as a therapist, and probably not so much about how you fit in a larger role with other therapists. And I think that's such an important aspect to your scope as a clinician, no matter what what discipline hat you're wearing. And, you know, that plays it's a vital role in terms of when there's multiple therapists for one client, and we do kind of get a lot of that out here in rural practice because, as Bailey said, they are so complex. In an outreach team, obviously, you know, it's more cost effective to the business and more cost effective to clients being in a private service that we do travel out on one occasion. So then you're having to establish, you know, when are you going to see this client in, like, relevant to when everyone else is going to see them, and that kind of dynamic at play. In terms of that other aspect of outreach, there's those interpersonal skills that you develop. So you are living in some cases and working with a close-knit group of people. So, you know, you have a big day, and they're usually bigger clinical days, and you see lots of clients, and then you might be staying in some staff accommodation, and there's those kind of social components as well. So you're kind of having to learn quite quickly those clinical aspects of, like, confidentiality, you know, that ability for work-life balance, switching off, and then, you know, maybe starting that next day and with that professional hat back on, and off you go, and you're seeing clients again. And then I suppose the other aspect of scope is that being quite clear too, at times there are quite limited services. So your knowledge of other disciplines and your own discipline can really play a role in closing the gap in some of those therapeutic services and the disparities in terms of accessibility. So my personal experience is I had to really learn a lot about physio and OT to be able to provide an effective service, because potentially that client can only see the physio monthly, and I need to set them up in a prime position to do my speech therapy activity, and I need to be kind of feeding that back to the team. So it's quite a broad role that you have in terms of your scope, but you also kind of stay in your lane in terms of those kind of really clear-cut clinical abilities and things that you can do.
Yeah, I think that sort of navigating the, you know, staying in your lane, but also working out when you have to go, you know, divert and get into somebody else's lane, that would take some practice. But it must be so rewarding. Is that what it's been like for you guys?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And just even learning, I think you just learn a newfound respect for your, like, counterpart disciplines, and that greater understanding, which I think is so hard to grasp. And I think I've only just kind of grasped it. Like, I'm still a very early career therapist. You're not expected to grasp this whole big picture in your first 6 months. But the quicker you can kind of identify its components, the more reward that you see as a clinician practicing.
Yeah. And have you both experienced, you know, the support from Vital Health, you know, because you've still kind of got your L plates on?
Yeah, definitely. I think that was probably one of the highlights, I would say, about my new grad year and early career, has been the supports that we've been offered. So in my new grad year, I was very fortunate to have weekly supervision. It wasn't individual supervision, which I found quite beneficial, because there were definitely days where, particularly in some of my outreach locations, I'd just come back and I just would have no idea what to even begin with. So yeah, the clinical supervision team here have been really supportive, and, like, you know, also just hearing how you're feeling as well, and checking in with how you're doing, obviously managing like your caseloads and your own expectations, as well as stepping you through the clinical side of being an OT as well. Yeah, definitely, I felt very supported in this role.
At Vital Health in particular, they recognise that you're people first.
Yeah.
And particularly for us, you know, if you're kind of moving out by yourself, they do kind of check in, and there's a lot of there's those formal supports that Bailey was mentioning, but there's also some of those informal or kind of spontaneous responses to those kind of hallway chats or quick phone call, I need help, that kind of thing. And also just kind of building more of a friendly working relationship here in community, because you're kind of invited to those community events. So you have some people, particularly here at Vital Health, that are locals, and then others like ourselves who have come in from Brisbane and maybe have only lived in community, for 1 or 2 years max, or just starting out. So there's kind of those informal structures as well. So if you can, like when you are searching for a new grad job, to find those, and often they can be filtered, like when you're having an interview or things like that, find those supports, then that's really good, because I think that's foundational in building up your overall sense of connectivity and enjoyment in your workplace.
Yeah. And I just want to kind of go back to what Caro was saying about, finding the right fit, and, and in terms of, outside of the clinical, fit, you also want to be able to do, maintain your fitness, or, what other outside interests that you have as a person. So in terms of those kind of things, how's that looked for you both in Roma?
Yeah, I think particularly moving out at the start of last year, I'd say it probably took me a little bit to figure out the work-life balance side of things, which I think coming in as a new grad, like you're fresh, you're ready to go, you want to put your all into it. So it's kind of work. But yeah, I think, as Caitlin mentioned, being in this community, having a few clinicians that have grown up and lived out here, that are always on top of what events are going on and just random little country things that are going on. I think that really helped to firstly expand like your social circle, and like you're often on the weekends you'll be hanging out with work people. For myself personally, I was able to find a church out here, which again added to just that sense of connectivity in a community that I've only just been a part of. And they're really supportive as well. But yeah, there's definitely, there's gyms out here for people who want to do fitness. Yeah, there's team sports, and lots of different opportunities for whatever your interests are.
I think a prime example, rugby's huge out here.
Yeah.
So, and like Vital Health being a multi-disc team with EPs and physios, like we're a sponsor of the rugby, but also if we're not physios, like myself being speech and Bailey OT, we go to those events in the Vital Health tent, supporting our colleagues who are playing, cheering them on, handing out ice blocks, just those kind of really fun things. Like, so you could be playing in that, or you're there just being a support person because maybe that other person is a new grad like you and actually hasn't built those social connections external to the workplace yet.
Yeah, I like how you support the rugby, but then you have to fix them all up as well. So no wonder there needs to be so many allied health professionals out there. Caro, let's go back to the importance of being strategic and strategic planning. Your experience with this aspect of recruitment, what advice would you have for the students?
The more that we know, the more that we can find that right fit, and also their long-term goals, where they wish, want to go to at their next level. And that can be very fluid because it can change and that. But yeah, it's more about that long-term, what the plan is, and that not just necessarily getting that first job, but also getting to that next level in the career of someone as well.
Louise, anything you want to add to that?
So
yeah, yes, I agree with Caro. There's also, we've had in the rural and remote communities, because you are having such a generalist role in seeing all different types of patients and having hands-on experience with pediatrics as well, geriatrics as well as, there's a whole lot of gamut of experience that you'll obtain rather than being in such a niche area. if you're working in, say, the city, you may only see a certain type of patient. So the experience is you're becoming a rural generalist, and that is actually allowing you to progress your career. I see it over and over again where I'm talking to a new graduate, and then 2 years, 3 years later, they're the team leader. And, you know, they're actually being able to go off and do extra training, and some, when we've got the scholarships funding, we're able to assist with that, where they can go off and do postgraduate courses to become, you know, more qualified in the area. And they might want to get an expertise and go into, you know, women's health or into speech or whatever it is with children with autism. So there's a variety of different opportunities, and there's so much there for online courses, being able to go and do a particular course and get support to go to that course when we have the funding from the federal government for scholarships as well. So there's that support there as well. And I've just seen it over and over again where people have just gone ahead in their career by doing that rule and work and being able to have a fulfilling career. Would you agree, Bailey? And would that be something that you both see?
Yeah, I guess I can touch on this a little bit more, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I guess I just want to note as well, so obviously this is my second year out, but already I definitely feel my career is progressing much more than I think it would if I had have stayed, you know, around Brizzy. And I've actually started specialising in hands as well. So hand therapy, as well as still maintaining that rural generalist caseload. It's always been an interest area of mine, and out here there's such a need for it too. And being in a rural community, you're not competing against other, you know, other practices. Like there's a client there, and you're able to fill in that need and that gap, which has been, yeah, really cool to work in that space.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So, Louise, in terms of, you know, for the GROW students, do you have a kind of a short list of what the employers are looking for? Like, you know, in terms for the GROW students to kind of keep that in mind when they're kind of planning ahead?
Definitely. Like, big one is communication. Being able to communicate with the clients and having that open communication with your co-workers, and being able to fit in the community and be a little bit more progressive in the way you think in terms of client and patient treatment as well. And also being able to feel comfortable in doing outreach services. So that sort of work as well. Are you hearing me okay? I think it might be dropping out a little bit.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
It's fine.
Okay, great. All right. And it's also looking at this, what skill sets you can bring, what qualities, you know, have you actually done volunteer work, or have you worked in, while you've been studying in, say, we've got examples where people have worked in pharmacists and the pharmacies and have done volunteer work in, you know, if there's psychologists in different communities, social work areas. And also, you know, so it's about those qualities. They want to see if you are going to be able to fit into the community, fit into their actual team, and be able to progress and have a willingness to learn, a willingness to be able to progress in the future for, you know, specialising as Caitlin and Bailey have done in different areas. You know, what's your interest? Talk about that as well, you know, where you see yourself, you know, heading in the future. What do you want to bring to the table? So, Caro, anything else you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I agree with everything you've said, Louise. It's more about, I keep on going back to the fit, the match, because, you know, like if you're in a position and it's not giving you what you want, then you're not going to enjoy it. And it's really, really important when you come out that reality doesn't give you that shock and think, what have I done for the last 3 years? This isn't really where I'm heading. And that's when, you know, talking about what your long-term goal is, short-term, what you need to, what's your happy space and things like that, because then it helps us sort of give the, like, it's sort of a summary of what you are when we're talking to a practice to, and they can say, oh, well, we do this, or we've, you know, got the football team, or we do fishing on a weekend, or we do, you know, like a lot of practices, especially rural, they tend to, you know, have dress up days and, you know, stuff like that, which kind of makes it like, wow, this is a good fun place. But we're learning, and with the outreach services, you get such a wide variety of cases that you wouldn't necessarily, as Louise was saying, you would get if you're in mainstream. But it's not to be scared, because the thing is that you've got that support, and we really ensure, like, and that's why we talk to so many practices, is that, you know, you're not just kind of showing a room and here's your 30 patients for the day kind of thing, because that just wouldn't work. It's, you know, you've got to get yourself, you know, on the ground and that. And if the opportunity presents, you know, go and see the location, get a feel for the area. If you've got a spare weekend and, you know, you're wanting to do a bit of a trip, that really helps, because then you can see what's on offer. Because a lot of, you know, in the best part of Queensland, they have a lot of, you know, festival days and events. So, you know, I attended one which was, you know, soaring and timber stuff and, you know, things like that. And they had the same, you know, floats going up and down the main street several times. So, you know, stuff like that really brings a community together. So, and, you know, the North Queensland guys would know what I'm talking about as such. So, yeah, it's about the fit for me.
Kara, I thought I might add, like, for those that, you know, are kind of seeking that exploration of where they might work, don't be afraid to contact that potential workplace and say, can I pop in? Can I meet you? I think that a lot of our new graduates, I did it myself. Bailey did it. Just, I think that's part of your pre-planning, right? Go in, check out what the, you know, what the space is, meet the clinicians that you might be working alongside. Some clinicians even, I know that some that were in my new grad year were able to have some work shadowing towards the end of the year. They were starting as new grads in that January, February period, and uni had finished, and they went out and did some work shadowing with some of the clinicians.
Yeah, and that's where we come into it, because we make that introduction and, you know, try and sort out, like, if you can say, I've got a spare weekend, you know, or we're doing a day trip or wherever you're based and things like that, but we can break that ice for you. So it's not like it's hard to just walk in off the street and there's chaos and confusion. So in amongst all of that, you think, oh, holy, I think I'll just go. And it takes courage also to just walk in without knowing who to ask. And I guess that's where we add that value added service, because we can break that ice for you through communication.
I think it's also probably useful to ask Bailey and Caitlin, before you started as new grads, did you have expectations of of your employer, of Vital Health, and how has that changed in the time that you've been there? So as a way of just for the growth students to perhaps better understand what expectations they can bring, rather than just accepting whatever is given to you, what expectations can they have?
Yeah, I think definitely a big part for me was around that supervision and having those formal supports. I just recall throughout, like, towards the end of my degree, when we were sort of, you know, looking at getting your first job and what you might expect from a first job. It was definitely highlighted around, you know, finding out what the supervision programs are like, what support is available to you. I think for myself as well, I was very aware that, you know, moving out to a whole new place with, you know, having people that I'm going to have to get to know. I'm in a whole new town. I'm definitely someone who learns best when there's other people around and, you know, needing to ask questions and everything. So I think that was definitely one thing that I wanted to check off my list, was just to ensure that, you know, I had people there who could support when needed. And that's definitely been fulfilled above and beyond, I would say. That was probably the main expectation. I think I didn't really know what to expect moving out, which I think was just a combination of, you know, big life changes, you know, first professional job. So I think apart from that, I was fairly open to the opportunities that would arise, and have just kind of taken it, you know, day by day to start with. Yeah.
Caitlin?
Yeah, I think expect a challenge. That was something that I definitely had in my head moving out. I'm going to be challenged both professionally, like with that massive learning curve in my first 6 months, and also probably like interpersonally as well, like again navigating some of those, like for those that maybe haven't had full-time work in the past, that work-life balance, and that can be quite challenging. Expect periods of high emotional states and know that that's okay. That's something that was a learning curve for myself. So expect that there will be times where you're in those states of overwhelm, and that you're going to need those supports to help kind of break those situations down for you, and that will get better over time. I think particularly working rurally, expect to travel. There's different modes of travel, but even for those maybe, you know, living and working in rural locations but still have their family, partners, you know, and other supports in more metro locations, you know, you're going to have to, you know, do a bit of travel or make those commitments if you wanted to kind of, you know, go back and see them, or even, you know, you want to go out to those really remote communities and have that rewarding clinical experience. Expect to travel and experience in some points some fatigue, but you will be linked with those supports to help manage those things.
And I think another important topic to address this afternoon is, you know, how you manage, you know, when you're away from family, or you have a partner in your life, or maybe you're not partnered and it's like, okay, well, that's the end of my life, you know. So how have you guys navigated that?
It's challenging, I would say. I think, you know, my family are my biggest support network. So definitely moving away from that, you know, as Caitlin said, there's highs and lows. Definitely in that first, you know, initial period, it was really tough. I was, you know, very blessed that my family did make that 6-hour drive a couple of times, just I think for their own peace of mind. But yeah, it can be tough. I think we're blessed these days to have technology that we can, you know, call people and FaceTime. But I think in those moments where, you know, you might be feeling a bit homesick, or there's times where you've had a bad day, and sometimes it's not as easy to, you know, talk to mum about it or talk to your social supports. I think I've found you do end up, you know, leaning on your work colleagues or the connections that you make out here, you know, just to get whatever's on your mind out. Yep. And even just for that reminder to, okay, like, it's been through a little bit, do some self-care, do something that fills your cup. But yeah.
I think it's worth noting that there's lots of flexibility in rural generalist roles. So there is that aspect where you will relocate, far away in community. But, that's not, it doesn't have to be forever. And there can definitely be changes in your kind of working week to accommodate maybe for, traveling back to see family members or your partner. There are fly in, fly out roles available. It's just really what's going to suit you. So here at Vital Health, there's, a lot of young health professionals that have moved out by themselves. They haven't had a lot of those kind of partner commitments potentially, or roots apart from their family members. There are others that are married and their partners live in Brisbane, and they do more of a FIFO role into those rural communities, and their primary role is, yes, they have a base location, but they look at more of those outreach locations. And so they might do 2 weeks on, 1 week off, or some have even done 1 week on, 1 week off. And that's transient, so it doesn't stay the same. It's just kind of dependent on your working, what's going to work well for you. There are others where partners have moved out with them, and probably worth noting that there is a lot of work around, and I think that I know that Vital Health was quite accommodating. My partner moved out with me, so we moved out together, in using their local connections to find that person a job, or even touching base with Health Workforce Queensland and saying, look, this is my situation. It's kind of part of them getting to know you and your situation. Can you help me connect with my workplace who has that local knowledge? Or those even Facebook groups about, or community discussion pages about work and those kind of things, that kind of makes that move a little bit easier. Yeah, but I think expect it to be a challenge at first. Yeah.
But it sounds like, you can also be creative and flexible, and you learn from what others do and how it works for them. So we're just before we wrap up, I'd just like to ask you both, and Louise and Caro, just for one thing for the students, the growth students, to take away. Caitlin, let's start with you.
Oh my gosh, to take away. I think don't underestimate what you can kind of bring to a role as a new graduate. So yes, you're new in your professional role, but you're typically not new to life, and some of those other communication, interpersonal reflection, those kind of skills. And even don't discount the ones that those skills that you have learned on placement, because you are valuable, you will be valuable, and you will learn a lot. So yeah, look optimistic and just go for it.
Fantastic. Thank you, Bailey.
Yeah, I think as challenging as it can be at times, I think at the end of the day, it's such a rewarding experience. And definitely looking back, even for my new grad year, there were times where I didn't know what to do, but I still look back on it, and I think you have that sense of, wow, I made that decision, I took a chance, I took a leap of faith, and now I've got so many life skills and even clinical skills that I didn't have before, and I may not have gained if I didn't choose to do this. And you end up, being out in the rural setting, you just end up with so many cool stories and adventures, which is, at the end of the day, all worth it.
Thanks, Bailey. Caro?
I think it is all about the fit, to be honest. The adventures, the sharing of stories, sharing of what you're looking for. It all helps to build that jigsaw puzzle together to make sure that where you're going for that first placement is where you want to go. So there's so many opportunities and experiences that you can have, and we part of our role is to ensure that you have those objectives that you're looking for, that you meet, and you have a great time. It's, you know.
Louise.
For me, it's no question's a dumb question. Like, ask those questions. Oh, you know, am I going to be able to have someone in the team to support me if I go out in my first rural placement? You know, am I going to be able to, you know, find like you know, basically ask the questions, what's the community like? What are the accommodation like? You know, so those questions we will be able to answer, and the employer will be able to answer. And it's just bring yourself, and as the girl said, back yourself. You've got, you know, some really good qualifications that you can bring it to a community that are really going to appreciate your skill sets. They need people like yourselves that are passionate about providing a health service to a community that's in desperate need of people like yourselves, and really wanting to connect. And they will show appreciation for having that support and having to be able to have someone come to their community and provide a service, which sometimes they would have to wait for in such a long time. And if you're coming out there and doing that work, then that's really something that I appreciate. And I see that over and over again when I go out to community, is that, and you know, when I'm talking to the local community, it's like, oh, you know, Bailey, you know, Caitlin, I've heard it so many times already from people I've spoken to about how great it is to have your services there, and working with Vital Health and other organisations, and how important it is to have those services at home and not having to travel. So this is something that, you know, and they really do show appreciation. Would you agree, both of you?
Yes, and that's probably one thing that they are so grateful. And I think the level of rapport that you have with these individuals that you're working with is something that's unmatched, working in a rural community. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that the GROW students will have experienced the appreciation that the community has for what they're looking to achieve. And I also just want to acknowledge that the GROW students' courage in, you know, their own leap of faith to come onto the GROW program. You know, as you said, Louise, you know, don't ever underestimate the value of just being who you are. That will take you far. So I just really want to say thank you to everybody for being part of tonight's discussions. Thank you, Bailey and Caitlin.
And also with the GROW students, if you've got any questions, please feel free to contact Caro and myself, and we'd happily answer any more questions that you have. Evelyn's kindly put that contact details in the chat. So this is also being recorded. So if you ever want to watch it again, you can do that as well.
Or just give us a call, you know. If it's easier, if you're, you know, wanting to just have a quick chat or anything like that, just give us a call. We're always available. Not 24/7, but we are mostly available Monday to Friday.
Right. Definitely.
Sandra, is there anything that you'd like to say before we sign off?
Yeah, I just answered the question in the chat while we were talking, and I just wanted to let everybody know that, you know, regardless of your location preferences, we can still help you out. This is not just, you know, directed at North Queensland and Central. If your interest is, you know, somewhere else like Darling Downs area, like, you know, we can still help you out, find the right opportunity. So just reach out, then we'll have a discussion about what your particular circumstances are, what your location preferences are. It may be that you were interested in North Queensland, but your partner moved to, you know, Darling Downs, and now you need to, you know, find a job in another location. We understand all that, and we can help you out. But look at it as a journey and as an opportunity, because this is an opportunity while you're young to build your career while you're young, and you can, you know, with a view of maybe even becoming leaders in your field. You know, we have seen a lot of, you know, new grads building a successful career in about 2 or 3 years. They become team leaders, they become, you know, part of the leadership team, you know, in their roles. So think of all the opportunities this has to bring. We'll be with you every step of the way, so we can find you, the right opportunity. We can guide you through how to apply for funding, to upskill through our scholarships program. So there's a bit of case management is involved in that. So yeah, we're here to support you no matter what your inquiry is. Reach out to the team, and happy to help.
Thanks, Sandra. And thanks, Louise and Caro. And also thank you, Evelyn and Wendy, for managing behind the scenes. And thank you to the Grow Rural students. It's great to see you all again. And I hope you got a lot out of this afternoon's session. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Caitlin and
Thank
Bailey,
you.
so much for being guest speakers today too.
Yeah, fantastic.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.